Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. All right, you guys, we are back with part 2 of the Gainesville Ripper with Lisa VanderGriend, our resident expert on this matter.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And we left off with the imprint of a hand on a paper towel with a missing finger.
Mm-hmm.
And they realized the bank robber is likely the murderer. So that's where we left off. But you did some Googling. You were just telling us.
Oh,
so
yeah.
What did you find out?
That I Googled how tall is Danny Rawling, and one site said 6'1" and the other one's 6'2". So
Around there.
around
Wait,
there.
remember, he's a big boy.
That's true.
He's a big boy.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
I
Got to tell himself that a lot.
need to point out my shirt.
Mm-hmm.
I love your shirt.
It says Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Love.
Here's a fun factoid.
Okay.
Oh boy.
Tom Petty went to my high school.
What?
In Gainesville High School.
Shut
I
up.
love
Yeah.
Tom Petty.
Yeah.
He's way older than us, though, right?
What do you mean?
Well, number one, is he alive? And number two, how old is he?
You do know his music, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Oh, I know who Tom Petty is.
Yeah. He's definitely older than us. And when he died, I don't know when.
Yeah, I don't know one either.
Yeah. But he went to my high school. He was in the marching band. I was also in the marching band.
But he was there way before you.
Of course. Yeah.
Just to be clear.
I missed what's his bucket? Ryan Tedder from One Republic, who's the big
Mm-hmm.
producer. He produces on all the things. I went to high school with him, but he was just like, I want to say he graduated the year before I went into high school. So I wasn't in high school with him, but he was in the same singing group that I was in
Oh.
in high school. Mhm.
There we go.
He's a much better singer than I am, though. I can tell
Okay.
you.
That's fair.
Yeah.
I have zero fame from my high school.
She can't sing for crap.
And I also can't sing.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-mm.
Fair enough.
You're just good. You're good at other things, Nat.
Well, yeah.
We don't need to be good at every single thing.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Okay. So the investigators are realizing that there isn't a connection between this bank robbery.
Are they feeling like idiots because they didn't listen to the tapes? Because I would be. I'd be like, oh, crap.
Right.
Right.
Shit the bet on that one.
Right. Yes. So meanwhile, back in Shreveport, okay. So
Okay.
they're obviously, they get the news there too.
I bet they
Got
do.
it.
They
And
get the
so-
news there, too. They're not cut off from humanity.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. And meanwhile, the Grissom's murders are still unsolved. Remember the murders from 1989
Uh-huh.
of Julie, Tom, and Sean. As they're seeing the news footage of what's happening in Gainesville, investigators, people in general, are noting there's a lot of similarities between the crime scene from 1989 murders and the murders in Gainesville.
Mhm.
But they needed more physical evidence, right? To kind
Okay.
of say, those kinds of things. So they did find that the blood type of the perpetrator in Gainesville was type B. And this was also the blood type of the perpetrator in Shreveport.
Okay.
Now, I'm not hematologist?
Bloodologist? Hematologist.
Yeah.
I just saw one. Hematologist.
Yeah. But, B is more of a rarer blood type.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not one of
And
the
there's
most
something
common.
about like if you're a secretor or not a secretor. And I
That
can't.
sounds gross.
I know. I don't know. My mom would kill me because she was like a medical technologist. She's like, I should know this. But anyways, that also portion of it was similar.
Okay.
Was the same. Okay. So in Shreveport, they created their own task force to get tips from the community. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
About this.
Okay.
So somebody I haven't mentioned is that Danny had a friend named Cindy that lived in Shreveport. And when Cindy saw the stuff that had happened in Gainesville, she got kind of this like horrible gut feeling.
Mm.
She recalled an incident before any of this had gone down that Danny had come by and talked to her husband and told her husband, I like to stick knives in people.
Oh. Oh my gosh.
Somebody said that to you.
Which they're like, that's concerning. Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And it shows that you've done it. Okay, anyway.
Yeah, it wasn't like I might like to do that. It's like I like it. I
like
did
this.
it and I love it.
Right. So
Weirdo.
she calls the tip line and says, hey, I think you should check out this person named Danny Rawling.
Okay. Thank you, Cindy.
Yes. So she was crucial in connecting it to Danny Rawling specifically.
Woohoo.
All right.
Sidebar, when they actually listened to the audio recording, he says his name in it like a very smart person.
Of
Wow.
course he did. Well, he almost left his wallet at a crime scene. So he didn't know if he did or not, which
Yeah.
makes him even dumber.
And then just, yeah.
It wasn't like, oh,
I think
that's the last place I was. It must
Well,
be
that's
there.
like what Kohlberger?
Yeah.
Kohlberger?
He left his
his
sheath.
sheath. His knife sheath.
Allegedly.
Oh, he left it. Sue me.
I know, right?
Gotcha.
He's got his hands full.
Right. Okay. So all this time, Danny is sitting in jail pending trial for the Winn-Dixie robbery. Right.
Okay, so at least he's contained.
He's contained.
And they're probably noticing, we haven't had any graphic murders since he's been in jail. Wild.
Wild.
Well, they probably thought, I don't know when they released Edward Humphrey, the recon guy.
Yeah.
But, there was some false security there with him being the suspect. But he was cleared because the DNA didn't match.
Yeah.
So something that was interesting, I remember when I talked with the chief investigator of this case in Gainesville, he told me, like, just from a criminological perspective, one of the ways that they often catch, serial killers or people that are, kind of these more, what's the word I'm looking for, like harsher crimes or whatever, is they tend to commit like a lower crime, so to speak, and get caught for that smaller crime.
Yep.
And so that was kind of the deal with, he's there for like the robbery and then, that's.
Well, it's like Koberger getting pulled over twice driving home for following too closely.
Right. Right. Yeah. Interesting. So at this point, because they didn't know, if this person, if Humphrey's no longer a suspect, they were testing all the DNA of all the inmates in various Florida prisons. And they were kind of looking at people that had been arrested within a certain period of time, right? So obviously after the murders occurred. And so Danny was one on that list of like, we're going to, on my list to check, because he was in that pending trial for the Winn-Dixie robbery. Okay. They also noted that he had a missing finger, right? Which again, that wasn't a clue that the public knew about, so to speak. So with Cindy's kind of tip and all these other factors, in January 24th, 1991, Danny became the prime suspect. And what was interesting is that the investigators noted that when they interviewed Danny, he just had a lot of anxiety. They could tell right away. Like he wouldn't even look at the crime photos.
Oh, interesting.
He wouldn't?
He would not look at them.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay.
You usually see the opposite,
Right.
where they're
and
very
especially
fascinated.
a true psychopath, they don't tend to get super anxious. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, and they usually like to look at the photos.
Oh, totally. And then put on a show about how
Yeah.
couldn't be them, but also
Yeah.
Right.
But also I'm so
aren't I fun
fascinated.
and interesting and exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at the artwork.
So they interview him September 18th, 1991. He was already convicted for robbery. And during that Winn-Dixie robbery, he like assaulted an officer, because that wasn't enough to rob. He had to get
Criminal
violent too.
versatility.
Yep, exactly. So it was November 5th, 1991, that they finally indicted him on 5 counts of first-degree murder.
Okay.
Okay. And at this point, they've listened to the audio tapes. They've made the kind of those connections I said earlier about noting that the trace of fibers on the ski mask at the tent were connected to a crime scene. The blood on the trousers was connected to Manny, all those things.
Right.
So they got plenty of evidence. So originally, Danny pleads not guilty. Then he starts to confess a little more. And what's really interesting is he had a fellow inmate named Bobby Lewis. And he refused to talk to investigators, but would talk to them through Bobby.
Huh.
So there's even like footage where they're interviewing him and it's like Danny and Bobby, and like Bobby is answering for Danny.
Weird.
So Danny had told Bobby all the details, and Bobby answers for Danny about
Weird.
these things,
That's
right?
super weird.
Super weird.
I'd be like, I just want to make sure we all know I didn't do these things.
Bobby's like, bro, I don't like you like that.
He's like, I don't want to answer these questions,
Right,
dude.
right. So eventually, Danny starts to chime in. Maybe he didn't use the right vocabulary. Who knows, right?
Mm-hmm.
And this is where Danny goes with the I have a personality disorder
Oh, here we
line
go.
of defense.
That's rich.
Okay. So Danny says, well, I have different personalities.
Which is not a personality disorder. It's a dissociative identity disorder, if anything.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think it was called DID back then.
It wasn't.
It wasn't.
Not in the
It was
90s,
multiple
no.
personality.
Exactly. So he says, I have different personalities, and one is named Enad, which is Danny spelled backwards.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, I gotta admit, I didn't realize that right at first.
I wouldn't.
I do.
was
Yeah.
like, oh.
Enad.
Enad.
Sounds
Oh,
wild.
it's Danny backwards. And he says, Enad is this Jesse James type. He's not a good person, but he's not evil.
It's almost like neutral.
I don't know, Jesse. I don't know much about
He's
Jesse.
a Jesse James type.
wasn't
So.
I
like,
don't know.
I wouldn't invite him over for tea, but
No, for
kinds of
tea.
things, right? Oh man. Okay, so he says I have this Enad. I also have a personality that's called Gemini,
I don't like the sound of that already.
and Gemini is evil and causes Danny to kill.
I wonder do we know is he a Gemini?
No, but let me tell you, like, this guy is not very smart. Now, I know, do you guys like horror movies?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I also like horror movies. So, Gemini is actually a character in the third Exorcist movie.
Oh.
And
Those are too creepy for me.
yeah, and Danny even admitted that he watched that movie like around the time of the murders, right? So when the forensic psychologist was Dr. Harry Kropp. And when he interviewed Danny, he's like, I don't buy this whole devil made me do it Gemini thing, right? And so there was pretty much a clear connection that perhaps he'd watched this movie and connected with the Gemini killer or whatever from the movie.
Okay.
So there's that, right? Okay. So fast forward a little bit to September 1993. Danny is being resentenced on a hearing connected to the robbery. Okay. So at this point, he's given an opportunity to speak. I don't know why. And he's like, I want to address my fiance. Now, he proceeds to then sing to this woman.
Yeah.
So remember, this is the video. I'm like, just watch this. Don't look at anything else.
So wait, was he engaged?
Oh, that's
okay.
that's the trail, right?
Okay.
And you're like, oh, I didn't watch any of it. I'm like, whatever.
Do you want me to play the singing?
Yeah, let's
Send it
do
to
that.
both of us.
Let's do that. Let's
thank you.
play it. So
Okay, hang
he's
on.
in court for this other hearing and takes this opportunity to sing to somebody in the courtroom.
Oh my goodness.
Okay.
There it is.
I've got it. Let me turn my volume up.
I recall the day I first saw you. I reached out to say I love you.
Oh
It was hard to say. I couldn't touch you. So tell me, baby.
No.
Worst American Idol audition ever.
no.
That's a bop. I don't know what you're talking about. He's getting into it.
Okay.
We'll
cannot with
post that
that.
video.
It's wild.
He's getting into it.
It's bonkers,
That is
if you will.
Bonkers.
Bonkers.
that's
Okay.
insanity.
So let's take a little rabbit trail here.
I love that the judge was like, stop.
Bro. But he told him, say what you want to say.
I know, and then he
Right.
sang.
And he did.
And he did. Okay. So the rabbit trail here is the gal that he was singing to is Sandra London. I wouldn't expect you to have heard of her.
Uh-uh.
You could do your own episode on Homegirl.
Okay.
Okay. I think there was like a previous episode where you guys were talking about like, why do women fall in love?
Yes.
Thing. Okay.
Wade Wilson.
Okay. She's like your like OG of that, right?
Oh.
Okay. So let's go on a little rabbit trail here.
Okay.
Sandra London. And if you just Google her, there's this really interesting documentary where she's talking the whole time and it'll make your head fall off. Anyways, she talks about how when she was young, she had a fantasy that the boogeyman would come riding up to her window on a dark stallion and she would jump on the horse and fly away with him. This was her fantasy.
That's so weird.
Growing up. Okay. So when Sandra was in high school in 1964, I don't know if it was like a prom or a homecoming. It was some sort of dance. She met her first love, who was John Schaefer. You guys, when I said that name, you didn't react, so I'm guessing you don't know who that is. Okay. John Schaefer is a whole other vibe. But John liked to go to graveyards. She noted that they would, quote, make love, is how she would phrase it. Make love at the graveyard.
I don't think anybody's making love in a graveyard.
Right. But John would tell Sandra about his desires to kill women. And John in particular noted, there's this girl that I can see through the window who I know is flaunting herself. Right. And so and Sandra noted that when he talked about this, it was like there was like an anger attached to their arousal. Okay. And John is like, she's a slut. I'm going to put a stop to it. Okay. Well, Sandra made the one good decision in her life and she broke up with him. Okay. But he continued to stalk her, all these kinds of things.
He stalked Sandra.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah.
Fast forward a few years, John is caught in Florida after killing several women.
Wow.
2 of which were found in the woods. He had decapitated and murdered.
Wow.
Yeah. So
she's got a type.
Her first love was a serial killer.
Yeah.
A decapitator, to be more specific.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he was coined as like a sexual sadist because there was a lot of that going on with it. So Sandra ends up becoming a writer and like wrote for like computer manuals, which sounds mega boring.
Oh my gosh. I never even thought about the fact that somebody has to write that.
Yeah.
Oh.
Right.
No wonder she had an active fantasy life.
Yeah.
There we go.
Very bored.
So she had read this book written by Anne Rule, Anne Rule wrote a book essentially talking about her prior relationship with Ted Bundy. The serial killer Ted
Was
Bundy.
she married to Ted Bundy or just like dated?
I don't know. I haven't read any of that. But basically said, oh, you can write books about serial killers. Wait a minute. My first love was a serial killer. Maybe I can write a book about him. So she reaches out to John in prison and asks him, can we do a book together? You know, this guy's like, absolutely.
Yeah.
Right? So they end up writing, the book was called Killer Fiction, which is probably the lamest title I've ever heard, right?
Yeah, it's not great. That's not even lifetime worthy.
Yeah, it's not even lifetime worthy Killer Fiction, right? So John ended up later threatening Sandra and her daughter, and so Sandra again removed herself from the relationship. So he kind of escalated with all those kinds of things.
While he was in prison?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So she's like, I've had enough, right? Okay, so Sandra writes this book with John, and that work really drew the attention of other inmates all over, right? And so at this point, Danny's chilling in prison.
Right.
And he reaches out to Sandra and says, I really want you to study me. I want to be honest with you. I want to tell you my truth, right? Sandra reported like she found this, and this is a word she used, gratifying. Okay. Right. So in February of 1993, so that's, we'll do the math, 5 months before the prison Melody interlude, she gains the rights to all of Danny's writing, his art, his music, because apparently he, was quite the artist and a musician.
Interesting.
Which I'll let you Google his stuff. It looks like a 12-year-old doing tattoo art, in my opinion.
Okay, but she has the rights to it.
She has the rights to it. So when she first met Danny, went into the prison, she literally says, the first thing I noticed about him was his sweet smile.
Oh.
His sweet smile. And she notes, I was attracted to him. He made me feel like a woman.
Oh, Lord.
Gross.
Okay. So fast forward to the hearing. Danny singing to her in the courtroom, right?
Ugh.
Her response, she comes out after that court hearing kind of with this creepy smile. And the reporters ask her, like, what's your reaction? And her reaction is, I'm excited because Danny loves me.
Oh, my gosh.
Okay. So there's been some different theories about, like, was this lady for real? Was she just trying to, like, use her position, you know, but
For, like, clout.
yeah, to, like, be able to write the books.
Yeah.
But anyways, Danny's spin on writing the books was that he wanted to help others to learn from his story. Like, what went wrong? You know,
Gross.
that was that piece there. So that's
What went wrong was he got caught. I doubt he thinks there's much else wrong with his story.
Right.
right. So, so Sandra is probably one of the OG, like, prison lover thingies.
Serial killer groupie.
Serial killer groupie. Yeah, that's what she was actually known as, right? So that's in 1993, September. We got that serenading. Fast forward again, February 15th, 1994. That's when the trial was actually set in Gainesville.
Okay.
And so the prosecution was like, this dude is going to plead insanity. We already, like, we're ready for it. You know, if he's got Gemini and Enad going on, like,
Right.
those kinds of things.
He's kind of set the table for that.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But in kind of a, like, courtroom gasp moment, he changes his plea and confesses and pleads guilty. Again, at this time, those murders in Shreveport are still, quote, unsolved. They don't have the actual enough evidence to connect him to it. And Danny has not confessed to those murders. Okay. So a month later, in March of 94, the jury recommends the death penalty. And then judge grants that a month later, and Danny is sentenced to death. Okay, here's my sidebar. Around this time of the trial and the sentencing, there was an episode that aired on ABC News. It was called Turning Points, was like the news program there, about Danny Rawling. So there's this screenwriter named Kevin Williamson who's watching this program, and he's like, I'm going to write a screenplay. And he calls it The Woodsboro Murders. Okay. So he writes the screenplay for the Woodsboro Murders. This was the screenplay that was then later became the script for Scream.
That's incredible. I mean, this is like,
That's nuts.
we've said before on the podcast, these are some of our favorite movies.
Yeah.
That's wild. So he's watching this news program and he goes, I have an idea for a story.
Right.
And writes
then
the screenplay.
And then eventually comes Scream. Now, you guys are going to...
This guy's just sitting at home watching the news, watching this program, and he goes,
Oh, this is a
an
movie.
idea. I'm going to make a movie. So now, here's a confession. I've never watched Scream.
What?
What?
I know.
How?
I don't know.
How is that possible?
You have to watch them all.
We're going to have to make this happen.
So my question for you is, having not watched Scream,
Yeah.
I mean, is there any connection in the movie to this stuff?
I mean, it doesn't have...
The decapitation pieces.
right. Like some of the...
Or nipples.
Yeah, well, they can't really. That'd be what, NC-17 or rated X or whatever.
Yeah.
But it definitely, like, it starts with a victim and her boyfriend getting killed. So, and it really is like this small town, and this murder is targeting a group of friends in high school, like killing people that are kind of loosely connected to each other.
Okay, gotcha. Was he like, did he like creep around in the woods?
Yes. Not woods, but he would creep around their house.
Creep around the house.
Wait for them in the
find a way
house.
into the house.
Would he like look into the house?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And the camera angles, the thing that makes Scream kind of exceptional is just the way they filmed it. And it's a little tongue-in-cheek. That's why it's been so popular for all these years. It's a little meta, and it gets even more meta later because then they're like on the set of Stab, which is based on Scream, or they're fans of these Stab movies that are based on Scream, and then the murders are continuing to happen. So
Interesting.
But the femme fatale in that whole series is a brunette.
Yeah.
It's Neve Campbell.
Oh. Party of Five.
Kind of through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Every blonde gets killed in that. I can't think of a single blonde that survived.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, there you
And
go.
dude. Most dudes died too.
Oh yeah, the guys all died.
Sidebar of this sidebar. I was doing some recon, and not the kind that Edward Humphrey did. Sorry.
Good distinction.
Yeah, I was like, I saw this article. I guess there was a documentary made where what do you call it? Like the people that are like, oh, are there any dead people around here? Like seance.
Oh yeah.
What do you call that?
What would you call them?
I don't know.
Like a psychic, like
It doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
yeah.
They actually filmed this documentary. They went back to the campsite area of
Oh, geez.
where they think Danny was, and they're like trying to summon him. You know,
Oh.
it was really weird.
Weird.
Really
That's
weird. I didn't watch it because
stupid.
you had to pay for it. I'm like, that's not worth it.
You're like,
Not
no,
worth the
no,
money.
no.
But that is another thing out there where, it's like,
What
contacting
happened?
this
Do we know?
I have no idea.
Oh my gosh, I want to know. I'll pay the money.
You
I'll
pay the
have
money,
to
you
know.
watch
You just let us know.
Yeah.
Let us know. So, okay. So 94, the death penalty is recommended, and then the sentencing. Danny goes through 12 years of appeals, right? So he fought this death penalty until like literally the very end.
That's interesting because he pled guilty.
Correct.
He had to know the death penalty was on the table.
Yes. Yes.
Florida is somewhat known for the death penalty. Even Wade Wilson, it was like done and done, death penalty
Right.
in
Right.
Florida.
Right.
Interesting.
So right before the execution, I heard one account, it was like the night before or the morning of, he confesses to the Shreveport murders.
Wow.
So he
Right
admits
before.
his, he lost his last appeal. He was, scheduled to be in the next day or whatever, and he confesses to the Shreveport murders. Yeah.
Wow.
There was one thing that I found. I mean, I think everybody kind of knew he did it, but one account of an investigator in Louisiana, because what would happen if they tried to try Danny in Louisiana, and move the case there, right?
Mm-hmm.
They kind of strategized that Florida had a better shot and had a stricter
Yeah.
thing, so they had a better shot of it going through in Florida. So they almost kind of let that go that way. They had a better chance of that there. So October 25th, 2006 at 6 p.m., Danny's 52 years old, and he's executed by lethal injection.
Oh,
I
man.
literally remember this. I was in North Carolina, but I remember like the news and reading about it.
Well, this is right before we met.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah, so that's kind of the end of that story.
Okay.
The other thing I wanted to tell you about that's unique with Gainesville, and I know I put a picture on here, and maybe if you guys want to post that somewhere, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In Gainesville, we have something that's called the 34th Street Wall. And it's kind of like the, people go or like happy birthday or like do different graffiti things on it. Even though it's not technically legal, people do it constantly, right?
Yeah.
So right around the time that the 5 students were killed in Gainesville, the original memorial for them was painted by an Adam Tritt. And this is still legally the only portion of the wall that's technically legally permitted to be painted on. And then George Pauls, who was Tracy's dad, got written permission from the Department of Transportation to paint on that section of the wall. So from 1990 to this day, what you see in that picture, that Remember 1990, and it lists Sonia, Christina, Krista, Manuel, and Tracy, that is still on the wall.
Wow.
There has been a variety of volunteers over the years because idiots come along and they paint over it, gets put right back. In 2010, the UF Interfraternity Council, they put like a plaque on the sidewalk in front of the mural. There's also like the 34th Street, there's the wall, and then there's like a median in between.
Yeah.
They have 5 trees planted there, one for each of the victims. And so it's just a lot of people that come into the town have never heard of it. And so they see this memorial there. And I think it's just been a beautiful way that they have kept that piece there. It's funny. I said I had some Easter eggs I was wearing.
Yeah.
One was my Tom Petty shirt.
Right.
My second is my earrings. So these are actually, I was at home in Gainesville for it was like in April, there was a spring arts festival. There's this cool guy, I don't remember your name, so sorry. But he had a little booth up, and he takes paint chips from the wall and makes jewelry out of them. So this is
cool.
actually literally a portion of
Oh, wow.
the 34th Street wall.
That's awesome.
That's really cool.
So it's artwork too.
Yeah.
Cool tribute.
Yeah.
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 So that's kind of the end of that.
Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
Yeah. First
Okay.
of all, thank you.
Yes, thank you. That's a hell of a story.
Yes.
Mm.
I think one of the things that's coming up, if we're going to move into the psychology piece of all this, there's obviously so many things we could dive into.
Oh, yeah.
But the first thing that comes to my mind that we see all the time, and Lisa, you working with kids, right,
Mm-hmm.
is the childhood trauma part, right? Like
Right,
yes.
getting to the root of the issue. And obviously there's a ton of kiddos who turn into adults who have trauma, who don't do horrible things, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it is a massive common denominator for individuals who do.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just think of like the little kid, and there's
Mm.
obviously empathy there for the little kid, right? Like the
Mhm.
puppy. When you first mentioned the puppy, I was like, oh no, he kills the puppy. But no, he like really loved the puppy.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. So it's not like he started as a kid with some of those behaviors that we see.
Right.
There probably is a genetic component in his brain because when I think about his father,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have to be a little bit psychopathic. That's a
Mhm.
trait to bury your kid's beloved puppy. Like you've got a bunch of shit going on if you do that.
Right.
What's interesting to me too, because now I agree with you 100%. He clearly had some empathy as a child initially.
Mm-hmm.
And what I wanted to ask you, Lise, from a child therapy perspective, we talk so much about prevention on the podcast, and people don't really know what play therapy is, but I've had the luxury of watching you over the years,
Mhm.
and kids are just full of metaphor. They will play out
Mm-hmm.
things that have happened to them. And I know, you know, y'all, we'll post a picture of Lisa's office, but everything has a specific place. So when the
Mhm.
kids come in, it's always the same. They can find their toys, the things they're connected to,
Mm-hmm.
and they will play out some pretty intense stuff, actually.
Mhm.
Right.
And so I would love if you would talk a little bit about like sand tray and some of the things that you do with kids and what they show you.
Right.
They don't
Mhm.
necessarily tell you, but what they show you.
Right. Yeah. The kind of catchphrase we say in play therapy is that for children, play is the language and toys are the words that they use. Right. And over the years, I really started out with the non-directive type therapy. And that's the idea that I don't come in with an agenda, but I follow the lead of the child. And that goes with the theory that the child is the leader and director of the play.
Right.
But over the years, I've adapted all different kinds of modalities. And even in the last couple of years, EMDR with kids, which has just been really great.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But the idea is that children communicate all the time. It's us adults that aren't have a bended ear to listen. You know, that the children have a wisdom about themselves that only few can hear.
Mhm.
And so we have to almost listen with our eyes in some ways when we're looking at like play therapy. So one of the things when I think about Danny, which was just like so interesting about this case when I was doing it, was thinking prevention wise.
Yeah.
You've got like the DV component, which is y'all's gig.
Oh, yeah.
And
We
then-
would have James. James
Yeah,
is the one we would
and
meet.
I might have Danny, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know because they're, he has that little bit of the sadist
Yep.
streak there going on. So that's a whole nother conversation. But
Yeah.
one of the things I thought about with him is something that he did not do later in life, which is to treat people with dignity.
Mhm.
All of his crimes have that heinous, undignified
Yeah.
piece to those victims.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this full circle moment of how he had potentially experienced his childhood.
Yeah.
He was not treated with dignity.
He was not.
And you're right, Nat. Doesn't mean you grow up to become a serial killer.
Mhm.
No.
But I thought a lot about like in children in general. Okay, guys, this literally happened this morning. I was at the Starbucks inside King Soopers.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like super backed up, really busy. There's a sweet girl. She's probably in middle school. And like she was asking, like, they were like, oh, what's your name? And she said her name. And then her mom comes by and she's like, haven't you told him, like, what's going on? Right. And then she looks at the girl and she goes, you're ridiculous. And then leaves.
The mom?
The mom. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Guys, I turned to this girl and I said, you're not ridiculous.
Oh.
You're okay. And it's not your fault.
Oh, I love that.
Starbucks is just busy right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like literally.
What'd the girl do?
She just kind of looked at me with big eyes. She looked like she was about to cry when her mom said that. Anyways, so that's the sidebar. But like this idea of speaking dignity and honor into every single child you come across.
And that their experiences, if we're going to be good adults, right? Life-giving good adults, their experiences should, if anything, be elevated above ours. So they're not annoying. They're not an inconvenience. They're not super frustrating. Like we were in session. When was this? A couple weeks ago. And one of your little clients started singing in the hallway.
Oh,
with
yeah.
the ukulele.
Yes.
Okay.
And it was
So
the most
cute.
adorable thing. And actually, our group, we don't know who this kiddo is or anything. The group was really soft about it. It was actually really
I
cute.
thought it was really
And
sweet.
part of that is Nat and I thought it was really sweet. So Nat and I are looking at each other and we're smiling, and then everybody's smiling, and just the innocence of a child and the confidence of a child.
Yes.
To just be
I
kind
mean,
of
just belting it out.
belting in the hallway is so cute. If you had little Danny, right? Okay, because I could see parents. It would be mom. I could see mom. Maybe if she got away from dad, dad would be with us, right?
Yeah,
And that would not go well for him. We'd be like, sir, sit down. I don't care that you're a police officer. If anything, that makes me more worried.
Right.
So it would probably be mom if she got the gusto up to get away, or they would bring him to be fixed because his behaviors, he's out at night, he won't listen, he's whatever, right?
Yeah.
What kinds of things might Danny do in a sandbox or a sand tray
Oh, geez.
to show a therapist or tell that if play is the toys are their words, right? What would you guess he might gravitate towards to try to communicate his story?
Right. Well, now you got me. We got a whole nother segue here.
Yeah.
So something that's really important to understand with play therapy and sand tray in particular is that children, create different levels of distancing.
Okay.
Okay. Sometimes, and this is all part of like a defense mechanism about how close they want to either consciously or unconsciously put the self in the scene or in the play, right? So the greatest level of distancing is you see children's play or what they create in the sand tray is just sort of a story or a world where the self is not realized. And this comes a lot, just so I give credit, this comes a lot from the work of Dr. Ana Gomez, who does a lot with EMDR and sand tray.
Yeah.
So they might do a story about a little bunny that likes to go out in the moonlight because that's when the bunny feels best. All right. We don't know who the bunny is, or it's just the bunny, right?
Or why the nighttime feels best.
Why the nighttime feels best. And the bunny likes to watch other bunnies in their bunny holes.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so that's the farthest level of distance.
Right.
The second level of distance is we might have more of the symptomology and the self starts to emerge. So we've got the bunny whose dad bunny is really mean to it and sometimes tells it it's useless. And sometimes I mean the bunny feels useless. Okay. The closest level of distancing is where the self is fully realized. So that's me, I'm the bunny, or this is me, Danny,
Right.
playing, right? And this is my dad, and this is kind of how it goes.
Yeah.
So you see all those different kind of levels of distancing. So there's no way I could say what they would play, right? One of the I think metaphorically about the nighttime is for a child like him is, for people to feel that they have dignity and they matter. The things that are kept in the shadows need to come to the light and know that whatever comes to the light, I fully accept you. So I would be curious to know, how can this person feel you are important in the daytime, when all is around you and I can fully see you. So that's some interesting things about that.
Mm.
I would imagine with like domestic violence type play, we tend to see some pretty similar themes
Yeah.
in the play in terms of violence as it relates within a relationship.
Yeah.
So you don't just have like a dog getting hurt; you'd have a dog hitting another dog.
Yeah.
You know, so it's all and they're in some form of a relationship.
Right.
Yeah. So there's a couple different things. That's one of them.
Well, that's so interesting because we talk, and one of the core competencies for DV treatment is intergenerational violence. So one of the things that we do is if a child witnesses domestic violence, it's reportable.
Mhm.
So if you have violence in your home, it's just important for you to understand that they are experiencing harm during those altercations. And what I always tell our clients, because they're like, well, they were asleep in their bed or they were in the backyard or whatever. And I will ask them, raise your hand if you ever listened to your parents fight, ever. Do you ever sit on the stairway or in a doorway or creep down the hall to hear what your parents are fighting about? And it's universal. I don't really know anybody who hasn't done that at one point or another. Even if you have lovely parents who only fought in their bedroom, there's still a level of curiosity. Children are naturally curious. They want to know what's going on. So we treat that with a lot of seriousness in our work. And our prevention typically looks like we work with the person who's inflicting the violence. Then there are people who work very well with the victims. The thing I love about your work, Lisa, is you're working with the most defenseless people in the whole situation. It's the children. But there is a way in which we can protect their little psyche when they're going through something like this. I do feel like if Danny had a you, there's a chance he might not have turned into the Gainesville Ripper. I think that's possible. Because one of the things that you're able to do is bring that dynamic at home into the light with a trusted, safe person.
Right.
Not unlike what you did at the Starbucks.
At the Starbucks, yeah. Yeah, there's a quote from Dr. Norton, he talks about to witness domestic violence is to endure domestic violence. And that comes from the research around children when they've even looked at like the victim, brain scans of the victim, kind of what's lit up in the brain, and then they do of the kiddo, and it's the same parts lit up.
That's why, I mean, that's why it's reportable. It's not necessarily quote unquote reportable if a kid isn't there, right? Which is unfortunate. I want it to be reportable for anyone, but ultimately it's up to that victim. But when kids are involved, it's now not only domestic violence, but child abuse.
Right.
Probably because of that, right? Because the kid is experiencing almost the same type of emotions as the individual who's getting abused.
Correct. Yeah.
So.
And everyone in that dynamic needs help. Natalie and I love our clients. Our clients are not serial killers that we know of anyway. But we work with folks who are extremely remorseful for the way their actions have impacted their family. And then we also work with some who really aren't, you know, and there's a distinction there, and we treat them differently in treatment, meaning we're kind to everyone. But what the actual treatment looks like is different for someone who's capable of empathy and somebody who's not.
Right.
So the fact that Danny was able to attach to an animal and have feelings towards an animal, there's a level of empathy there that's kind of beautiful. He just had a perfect storm upbringing and probably a screw loose that looks like dad. You know what I mean?
Was there much information on his brother?
No, I also didn't look into it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I was just curious.
That's a great question.
I think the big thing for me, again, is so obviously little Danny, right? Big Danny, jackwagon, right?
Yep.
Like total asshole. Plus some.
Grade A
asshole. So little Danny, there's that empathy for. But then as you were sharing the story of the victims, you know, you just think of, and like it being a smallish town, especially when college students aren't there, and close knit, and you could hear the sirens the day that they found those bodies. You know, part of my heart piece goes to being from a small town. You just know everything so quickly, and how scared that, like, just the fear that creates within the community.
Right.
Right. And then also, they didn't catch him for a long time, in my opinion. And just the lack of trust that you would have walking around.
Right.
Well, remember I think it was the Texas 7, they escaped prison and they caught a few of them, but there were a few still on the loose. And we knew they were in Colorado somewhere, probably in the Colorado Springs area. And they actually had the schools locked down at times and things like that because they sort of had a bead on a geographical range, right?
Right.
And I can remember going to my car at 5:30 in the morning and it's dark and me being like, oh, you know.
Right.
And I ended up getting my nails done the day that they got caught. But the hotel where they got caught was practically in the same parking lot of where I was getting my nails done that day. And so realizing like, okay, we have dramatized in our media some of these things, but also we need to be vigilant. So how do we know how vigilant to be?
Right.
And it only takes once where you miscalculate that to have something pretty tragic happen. So that's something Nat and I talk about a lot is how do you balance an appropriate amount of fear, an appropriate amount of vigilance with a PTSD response of hypervigilance and looking over your shoulder all the time, and then you can't enjoy your life.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, with someone in a town like that, how could you? Right?
Oh,
like go out and feel safe and think that thing because
you couldn't.
I mean, the last victims you talked about, Manny and what was her name?
Tracy,
right? Tracy asking through the door, are you him? Right? Like just feeling that. I can't even imagine.
No, that's horrible.
You know? So yeah, those are the two big tugs on my heart were little Danny and just the impact, obviously on the victims and also the community and just the fear that everyone probably was going through.
And I love that they're honoring the victims because you know, somebody might say, well, that was all these years ago. But the truth is it's not. Your mom has a vivid memory of that. You probably, even in your subconscious, have some memories that are held reacting to your mom being afraid.
Right.
Like these things have an impact. And, you know, we're gearing up to do the Moscow murders in the near future. There's so many parallels. And because he was a criminology major, I think we're going to find he's probably a prolific writer. He was posting things online. Nat and I have talked about how some of the most serious and violent psychopathic humans are big time writers.
Right.
They write and write and write because they're having an experience in their brain they can't understand.
Yeah.
And it's like, not like everybody else.
Danny did the audio recording.
Yep.
Right.
I wonder if he had a dictaphone.
Well, right.
I don't know, but yeah.
It's just really interesting. And so we're going to be digging into more of that. But Lisa, thank you so much. What an incredible case and a hometown case, which is so cool. And I just really appreciate all the work you put into to bring this to us and to the listeners. Yeah. So we're going to have you back on for sure.
Absolutely.
Right.
And all of our listeners are going to be like, where's the organized one?
We were laughing earlier. We're like, Lisa's going to end up being our producer.
Yeah.
They're going to want more
She's
Lisa,
less
of
your
us.
Your guys' research is trash.
Like, you knuckleheads, get it together. But I so appreciate the work that you did. And, you know, you are a play therapist in the area. You know a lot of great play therapists. And so I would encourage our listeners, if you have kids struggling, like, get them help. It's a real thing and it does really help. It's not to fix them, but it's to support them and give them some room to grow. And it's some of the best prevention work we can do.
Yep. Yeah. Quick plug for Southeast. We have phenomenal kid therapists here. Obviously, Lisa being one of them. She's actually the head honcho of the kids program we have.
She is.
And so if you are in Colorado, we're a great resource here. We can also give resources if you're in other parts of Colorado. And if you're not, and your kiddo's struggling, look some stuff up. There's great resources out there for your kiddos. So.
And we've been getting lots of messages. You can DM us with questions. But yeah, if you want to get some help for your kiddos, we'll be posting resources and we can get that over to you.
Yep.
So thanks so much. As always.
Oh, bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more Crime, Psychology, and Heart.